Welcome to the Learn with Dylan show, where we learn wisdom through others. Today, we're here with Sharna. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Sharna. We're going to be learning from you about the power of becoming an excellent communicator. And I randomly reached out to you on Instagram, and me
Yep.
being myself, I just said, "Hey, you want to come on my show?" And then you're eager enough to come on. We had a
Well,
bit of
me
a
being
chat.
myself, I said, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's it. And now we're here. And I
Great.
don't know why. I think it's just because it's become such a important part of my work. I just find like being a good communicator is everything. And I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that it does open up many doors for you. A lot more
Hmm.
doors if you're a good communicator to a bad communicator. Yeah, you
Yeah,
could be leaving a lot on the plate. So today we're going to learn a lot from you. But for those that
hopefully.
don't, yeah, those that don't know much about you, I'd love to get you to introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, and what you've sort of done in the past.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's always exciting to chat about the things that I love to chat about. So it's great to be on your podcast. And I think in a nutshell, I studied in communication and marketing. So I've always had a passion for words, for speaking, for people, writing, that kind of thing. And that just seemed like the best sort of degree to study to channel those skills and learn more with that. And then through that as well, and then a bit of my own experience with needing to present for my work or to actually train other people in presenting for work, I've realized that I just love the skill and developing the skill of public speaking and helping other people develop it too. And like you said, it's such an important skill that, leads to so many doors being opened. And I just find it really exciting that I can try and help people with that because I know it's helped me so much as well. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm really passionate about important, clear communication.
Yeah, awesome. And you've been on fire lately with your like content, and you've been doing some public speaking things over the
Thank
last few
you.
days. You said so. You're
Yeah,
you're on fire. It's good. Well,
thank you.
today I wanted to, I guess, yeah, talk to you about some practical tips to become a more confident communicator,
Hmm.
which can obviously, you know, create better relationships. Maybe it's about getting a promotion at work, just trying to
Yeah.
use it in everyday life, and
Hmm.
obviously public speaking on a platform.
Hmm.
So, can you tell us a little bit about like how to become more confident with your speech?
That is the $1 million question. How do people feel more confident with speaking? I think there's two ways to think about it. One can be, speaking up the front is when we feel most nervous or in a high pressure situation, but then also just being more confident in everyday situations. It could be making a phone call, asking someone a hard question, just answering the phone as well. So there's lots of ways we can be more confident with that.
Mm,
Depending on what the scenario is, I think let's just take public speaking for an example because that's where I
mm,
think most people feel nervous.
mm,
You might have heard before, but preparation and knowing what you're saying is kind of winning half the battle. If you know what you're saying and the content, that is already just such an important thing to nail down. And some of the confidence can come with if you're being asked to present something, it's for a reason. Usually because somebody thinks you're the expert at something, or you have a
mm.
great story to share, or they want your opinion on communicating something of value. So the fact that you are in that position means you should be confident to deliver something already just on the content. And then there are heaps of tips and tricks I can go through, if you like, about how
Yeah,
we can fake it till you make it a little bit, or also channel the confidence for yourself so that it shines to others. But yeah.
yeah. Have you sort of like yourself experienced like being nervous and everything on stage because you've obviously done some training? Can you run us
Yeah.
through like your personal experiences with
Mm-hmm.
being nervous and how you sort of overcame that?
100%. I think it's easy to assume that just because somebody does enjoy public speaking or has had training that they'll suddenly just not have nerves anymore. That is
Mm.
not true at all. You just learn to deal with them better and also kind of embrace them a little bit as something that can be your friend as well. So for me, I've always been kind of up the front in different things as a kid growing up, so I was relatively confident or okay. But
Mm.
then one of the big things for me that showed that I was nervous and needed some training was I was giving a big graduation speech actually for my end of my degree graduation weekend, and I was smack bang in the middle of two international hectic amazing speakers, and
Oh,
little
wow.
old me was there just like, oh my goodness, I'm so intimidated. And there's hundreds of people in the audience, and so it was then that I was like, I'm okay, I can speak up the front, but I had no idea how to structure it. I had no idea how to
Mm.
then strategically channel those nerves in a healthy way. So that was kind of what inspired me to be like, all right, I really want to improve in this skill.
Mm.
And so that was, yeah, a bit of a journey for me. But since then, I've done a lot of speaking and hosting and presenting and helping other people too. But it's
Mm.
really funny. There's a lot of things that I don't get nervous for anymore because of just a lot of practice. But even literally 2 weekends ago, I did a whole new business pitch actually for my public speaking business. And it was a bit ironic because I'm there to promote a public speaking
Mm.
course that I run, and I was freaking out
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the fact that I had to pitch it because the stakes were so high. So just because you've done training doesn't mean that you'll never not be nervous again. But
Mm.
yeah, it's about channeling those nerves and knowing that you'll get through them anyway.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I guess like how much training have you done? Like you said you've done some courses. Like just out of curiosity, like what have you done?
Yeah, lots of bits and pieces. I was involved in Toastmasters actually, for anyone who's heard of that. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a community, sort of like a community run but international program where people can practice their public speaking week after week after week.
Mm.
So I did that for about 2.5 years. So pretty much every Thursday night for over 2 years, I was doing a speech or a toast or impromptu speaking or a humorous speech and getting feedback on all of it, which is scary sometimes, but so helpful. So
Mm.
that was a big part. And then, I mean, just doing my sort of communications in my degree, you do your presenting and get a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
help there. And even just things like practicing on purpose. I was a trivia
Mm.
host, a paid trivia host for most of last year, so almost every week as well, getting up,
Wow.
hosting your questions, being with the audience
Yeah.
in a very more fun, relaxed environment. And then I've done some more serious, if I can say, hosting for like charity
Oh, really?
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
concerts and things like that. So lots of bits and pieces, but it's all a journey that you just develop as you go every time.
Yeah. And what have you? I guess what have you learned the most from like your own training? Like what skills have you learned the most, or what have been the biggest light bulb moments for you,
Yeah.
like with speaking?
The first thing that comes to mind for me personally that has helped me, and I'm continuing to try and be better as well,
Mm.
is actually not in the speaking, but
Mm.
in the pausing.
Ah,
We
yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
a lot of our public speaking or our communication is how do I say this better or how do I say it louder
Mm.
or funnier or whatever. But often our problem is we can ramble or I naturally talk very fast,
Yeah, yeah.
especially when I'm excited about something. And utilizing the power of the pause is one of
Mm.
the most underrated tricks
Mm.
because when you pause, people suddenly listen and it
Yeah.
draws attention to what you're about to say and it
Mm.
slows everything down and suddenly they're like waiting for your next
Yeah.
word. So at a very snapshot level, pausing is definitely one of the most underrated tips I can give and well timed before or after something very important. It's the key to not rushing through your speech because you're nervous trying to race through it. There's a lot of impact with being able to pause in a well timed spot.
You definitely learn how to pause when you do sales. So I
Right.
like
Okay.
as I said, I've done over 1,000 sales calls now. So
Mm-hmm.
and one thing that you get taught is the power of tonality, the power of your pause,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
how like your tone and your and pausing is so powerful because and
Yeah.
it's the same as like when you say someone's name, they'll like their ears will instantly prick up. It's like they'll
Mm. Yeah.
pay more attention. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. One thing I'd love to touch on because I know that I can do
Mm-hmm.
it, and it's something that I'm trying to consciously work on, and I know a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people do it, is umming.
Yes.
Like
Yep.
so I found the best thing to do when I'm being conscious about it is to just slow down and like allow a pause, allow a pause
Yes.
instead of going I'd love your feedback around that.
Mm-hmm. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I would assume that if we were to ask, a million people, what's the one thing about your speaking you want to improve? It's probably those filler words, the ums, the
Mm.
likes, the ahs, because they can, we can do a few of them sometimes when we're thinking, but once they become so repetitive that it's distracting, that's where we get into trouble.
Mm.
So what you've said is exactly true. It does come back to pausing is kind of the solution for that. Because why do we say ums and ahs and likes? We're trying to think of the next thing to say. And for some reason, and I'm guilty of this too, we're so uncomfortable with silence.
Mm.
We need to get used to being more comfortable in silence rather than just rushing to fill it with whatever we can grab. Like, so what? Everyone, for every new person, there's a new filler word. I had really as a filler word one time randomly.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so many different things that we choose. So it is really about feeling confident enough to pause. And I think when we're in a situation, we are in a time warp because for us, a pause of 1 second
Yeah.
feels like 10 years. And we're like, oh,
Yeah.
there's silence there. They think I'm an idiot because I don't know what I'm saying next.
Yeah.
No, when you pause and allow that space to be filled with just a little bit of silence rather than our filler words, it actually makes us sound smarter and more thoughtful and almost clever because we are
Yeah.
intentional with our words rather than just grabbing anything we can find to shove in that silence because we're so uncomfortable with it.
No, like I can actually think of some people that I know that personally take a long time to answer, but
Mm.
they come across as like they're really wise. They'll just like they'll
Yeah,
sit there
exactly.
and they're usually like old like wise teachers and they'll just sit
Yeah,
there for like a few seconds, think about it, and then say the answer. And you're like,
yeah.
oh, what are they going to say?
Mm-hmm.
So
It
yeah,
reminds me of that saying, how most people, what is it? Most people listen so they can respond rather than
yeah,
listen so they can understand.
yeah,
And, I'm a very fast talker, chatterboxer, but yeah, I've learnt there's so much in feeling okay with pausing. One, it gives you a chance to clarify your thoughts and really think about it. And two, like we said before, it helps people listen closer to what you're saying, and then you're not distracting them with all of those filler words that we love that love to leech onto us.
yeah. I find I use I do use like. That's one I'm definitely trying to reduce. I just said it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just said it. I'd love
You're
to. I'd
forgiven.
love to. I'd love to know some more practical tips, like tips that people can take away from this podcast and
Mm-hmm.
start applying them to your day. So, what are some common barriers that people face when they're on the stage or they're obviously just trying to communicate in everyday life? What are like a couple of common barriers that you see and some tips to overcome them?
This is a big one. Just the classic nerves and confidence and that fear
Mm.
of judgment and fear of failure is obviously this is a whole psychology insecurity thing, but it's so true. That's the biggest barrier that people have. And so it's like, what are the little tricks we can do to help people overcome it? First, before I share a trick, I want to share a comment, which sounds super stupid, but I stand by it because it deals with that idea of feeling insecure and everyone's judging me and I'm going to fail. And I did a poll recently on my public speaking club Instagram stories. What is the biggest fear you have? And all of it came back to nerves. What am I going to say? Will I look stupid? And so it's definitely such a real thing. So my mindset tip, if you can repeat this before you go on stage next, is this. Everybody picks their nose when no one is looking.
Mm.
And why I say that is because it helps humanize everyone else in the room. It doesn't
Mm.
put them down, it doesn't diminish who they are, but I think we are so quick to assume confidence in others but incompetence in ourselves.
Mm.
And so that's the first thing with our confidence barrier is we just think everyone else has it together. Oh, he's so great, or she's so funny, or they've been speaking for ages, they'll never get nervous. No, I was literally at a conference a few weekends ago and someone that was probably twice my age and twice as smart, they delivered their speech and I really commended them and thanked them afterwards. And you know what he said? Boy, I was so nervous.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like, and in my mind, I'm like, no, you weren't. You're 50
yeah,
years old
yeah,
and no, you weren't
yeah,
nervous. Only I get nervous, right?
yeah.
But the thing is, everybody is so human. And so just that mindset of everyone picks their nose when no one's looking helps to just put us all on the same level. And I think as well, as much as we want to feel like we're winning or being confident on stage, the audience wants that for us too. The
Mm.
audience doesn't want to feel
Mm.
uncomfortable. They don't want to see someone that's really struggling and miserable. So they are they're on your team, right? They're here to support you and want you to do well. So just as a mindset shift, I think that's something important. Rather than they're here to judge me, they're here to learn from me and they want me to succeed. Most of the time, I would say
I,
98% of the time.
I, I'd love to touch on that because I think it was Vin. You know, Vin, the communication speaker.
Yes, he's great.
So one of one of the best tips that he gives is just saying like it's not about you, it's about them. So
Mm-hmm.
just trying to think about giving them a really good experience. Like
Yeah,
that's what you should be there. Like don't worry about you. Just worry about delivering the message through yourself.
yeah,
So I find that
100%.
is a really powerful frame as well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it takes the pressure off ourselves then too, because we do think, oh, how will I perform or how will I speak? But really just taking that pressure off ourselves and saying, how can I, help this person or how can I inform them of something or persuade or entertain them? Those are the three main reasons why we communicate about anything.
Mm.
And we want them to have a good time. And often, if we're having a good time and get to a point where we're enjoying ourselves too, they will automatically have a good time as well. So hopefully that helps with the mindset shift. There's a few just tricks you can do physically before getting on stage if that's helpful as well. But yeah, it's good to start with them. It always starts in the mind, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I also wanted to touch on when you said that person went up and he come back and he was really nervous and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny because Lizzie and I we went to a comedy show a few weekends ago and
Mm-hmm.
we saw this comedian and she did a really good job. You know, she didn't look nervous at all, and it was funny because Lizzie, my partner, when walking past her, we could hear her say, "Oh, that was so hard. Like I was shitting
Yeah.
myself." So
Yeah.
it's funny, like it's true. Like we all put on a bit of a mask to get through it, but yeah,
Yes.
we're all human, so just got
Yeah.
to go back to that. But yeah,
Exactly.
I'd love to get you to share some of those other practical tips that you're talking about.
Definitely. A few things that you can do, kind of the classic three things you can do today to help
Yeah.
you is, especially if you are going into any high pressure situation or high
Mm.
stakes communication, it doesn't have to be on the stage, is our body and how we act with our body really can tell our mind a lot about ourselves. So it's hard to sort of show on a podcast, but if you can, you
Yeah.
might have heard the power poses. So if
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
sitting shriveled up and, oh, I'm so nervous and I'm going to fail, you're setting yourself up to not do very
Mm.
well. by faking it till you make it a little bit, shoulders back, even if you can go to the bathroom 5 minutes before and, in the cubicle on your own so no one thinks you're a loony, you can have your arms out in your kind of Superman power pose,
Yeah.
arms out with your, what's it called, your hands on your hips,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
chin up, chest out. I can do this. It tells your body that you are confident, and then it kind of
Yeah.
also tells your mind that you are. I'm not a psychologist, but I know there's a lot of
Yeah.
psychology and research around this.
No, that
So
sounds
that's
great.
one thing that you can do, is just really open up your body so you feel like that. And first impressions do count. So if you can win them over in that first 5 seconds, one day you've won them over. And when you can feel that you've won them over, you automatically, once you get that first lot of good feedback, that's where it can get addictive, because now you're enjoying it. So take that power pose attitude, walk onto the stage or into the interview or into your date, for goodness sake, whatever it is, looking like you're ready to be there. And then it's simple as well, but if you can just, again, pause, smile, you'll disarm them, they'll smile back, they'll feel relaxed about you, you'll feel a bit more relaxed about them, and suddenly you've just started on a positive note, and then the rest will continue from there. Can't guarantee it'll be perfect, but if you feel like you've won that first 5 seconds, then you have a much better chance of winning the rest. I'm not sure if you've
Yeah.
been in this situation, but often the lead up to anything is always the worst,
Mm.
I think, to that job interview, to that speaking engagement you have, to whatever it is. And so once you start, often then you get on a roll and things just happen, and that's how you go. So if you can really win the first couple of seconds or that minute, then you're okay. So power posing and a nice smile will really set you up for that in a very simple way, but it works.
Yeah. And like the power of smile, it's all those soft skills. And
It
that,
is.
like, and people, I don't think people, especially if they're like trying to build a business or, I don't know, go up the ladder in their job,
Mm-hmm.
like soft skills matter, and it goes
Mm-hmm.
really unnoticed, but it is noticed in a way. Like the smile,
Oh,
the
100%.
the friendly greeting. It makes a
Yeah.
massive difference. I wanted to share a little story of mine. I just thought of it then.
Yes. I'm ready.
When I was nervous doing a speech, so it was my best friend's wedding, and I was obviously his best man. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
I was up on the podium, or whatever it's called, podium, whatever it's
Mm-hmm.
called, and I
Lectern, yep.
obviously, yeah, obviously had like a few drinks because I was like, oh shit, I'm so nervous. And I,
Yeah.
I, I had it on my, I think I had it on my phone. I had it all on my phone, and I was up there. I was like, oh, I'll be alright, I'll be right. But as soon as I started talking, like I could see my hand, my phone. I was just like trying to pretend I was okay, and I was just like, my hand was just like shaking, and I was like,
Yep.
oh yeah, I met Mitch this time, and it was terrible, but I got
How
through
did
it.
it actually go? It was a bummer
Oh,
or what?
it was okay, but later that night, I actually got asked to dance in front of the whole wedding, and I killed it.
Oh,
So
well,
I have
redemption arc.
I have confidence in my dancing, but not in my speaking at that time. But my confidence has grown immensely in my communication skills lately. So I
It's
just want to
good.
I just want to share that story.
I love it. Actually, I
Yeah.
love that you shared that as an example, because a lot of people think, oh, public speaking, it's not for me. I'm not a business person. I'll never give speeches. I'll avoid them. I don't need it, right? But the thing is, like we've said, public speaking is really just that glorified, nerve-wracking version of just general communication. And th-
Mm,
and what happens often, people go, oh, I don't need it. I don't need to develop those skills because it's not in my job or not in my career. But then this exact thing happens. Oh, my best friend's getting married. I now need to do a toast
mm,
or a speech. And so in your personal life, suddenly the
mm.
whole wedding day of your childhood bestie is ruined for you because because the speeches are at the end, right?
Yeah.
So you've spent the whole day sweating on this stupid speech you have to give and not enjoying it because you're just waiting to get this
Yeah.
over and done with. And so it's things like that that people don't think about, where you go, just develop those skills, learn a few tricks, and get a bit of practice and feedback. So when those things happen in your personal life, you can do both, do the speech and also not be just a melting mess the whole day for a beautiful celebration. So it's so much more than just a career thing or a status thing or a promotion thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's about being able to enjoy your life at like those moments, and
Yeah.
that is a really really good point that I don't think a lot of people think on, because
Yeah.
it is really draining. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing about, like, if you're petrified about doing a speech, you're like you're worrying all day. Like, yeah, you're not gonna have the most fun, especially at like your
Mm.
friend's wedding or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's why communication skills is so important. Is there any
Yeah.
tips, like, let's just say you're public speaking, obviously got a massive crowd in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
What are your tips with, like, eye contact? Is there a thing
Mm.
where, like, because I think I've heard, yeah, it's good to like look at someone, then look at someone else, then come back. Like, what's your take on sort of eye contact to make you feel comfortable and to also make
Mm-hmm.
the people feel more engaged?
That's a really good question because if we're one on one in a conversation, we know
Mm,
there's kind of a certain ratio of eye contact in a one on one scenario where you'll usually look at them for a bit, but look away to think and come back to that person. But it's how do you make eye contact with, say, 500 people? You
yeah,
can't. So, how do
yeah.
you make it feel like you're making eye contact with 500 people? And what you said is quite good. So, there is a bit of a trick where if you can, and I was teaching this literally 2 nights ago at my
Oh, really?
program.
That's good.
Yeah, and one of the people there, she's a lecturer at a university, so this exact thing of how do I make it look like I'm engaging all these people? A trick is if you can pinpoint a couple of or a few people that are in various locations around
Mm,
the room. So if you're a lecture theatre and it's divided into three main rows, or in any other setting or venue where you can really kind of take turns around the room or the venue is good.
mm,
There's two tricks with that though. One, you don't want to be so vague and just looking around the room and glossing over everybody that you're not really making eye contact with anyone. You're kind of just scanning aimlessly. I mean, you
mm.
can get away with it a little bit more in a huge audience because they won't notice as much. But I think the trick to make it more personal for you and also more personal for the people that are in the audience is to choose a few key people that you can make eye contact with. Now, you don't
Yeah,
want to go back to the same person every time because then it feels like you're really just preaching to
yeah,
them and this
yeah.
message is for you and listen up. But it means you get a bit of that warm feedback if you are
Mm,
giving eye contact and they're smiling and engaging. It gives you a bit of that validation too. And so that's
mm.
helpful for you. And it's helpful for them because, one, even if it's one person out of 500 or three or five out of 500 that have made eye contact with you, that really makes a difference for them. And I think if you genuinely spend that moment to make that contact with them, the others around can tell that you are genuinely doing it for the person next to them or the row behind them or beneath them. And so it does make it feel more genuine for everybody. Now, it's very scary. It is scary when you look out at a huge crowd of people. The easy thing, and especially if there's spotlights as well, it can be hard. But if you can actually pinpoint people in a crowd, it's a really good way to, yeah, make sure you've got that engagement. So, who do you look out for in the
Yeah,
crowd?
I think it would be a really good idea if you are like scanning the crowd and you just like look at someone who, like, you're like, oh, they look really friendly, or like an older grandma or something. You're like, oh, I'm gonna look at her.
Yes.
She looks really friendly. She looks really welcoming. She's like, good job.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and you're not
And
going to
there's
be looking
usually
at someone
someone.
who's stern. You're not going to be looking at someone who's stern or is like, oh, I don't want to be here.
Exactly. And that's the thing, don't shoot yourself in the foot. You're already nervous. You already
Yeah.
are trying to deal with that. You've overcome that with your power pose and you're smiling. So if you look for someone in the crowd, look for a friendly face who's smiling back. someone gave me this tip. So even if it's someone good looking, just because you feel like that's an interesting person to look at, whatever helps for you, or someone
Yeah.
wearing something fun.
Yep.
But don't dwell on if there's someone there who's on their phone or they look bored or too cool to be there.
Yeah.
Don't
Yep.
dwell on those people. Don't
Yep.
try and laser beam your eyes into the back of their head and get them to pay attention. Just focus on those who are giving back to you, because you will feel more confident with that as well.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. Well, what I'll do is I'll wrap it up.
Yep.
Leave the audience with one tip or some resources that you feel like would be
Mm.
best. So, what do you feel like you'd like to do? Like one last tip or some resources
Mm-hmm.
that you've found very valuable for public speaking?
Ooh. I'll give you a tip and then I might have a resource to back it up.
Okay, perfect.
So my tip is, honestly, you've probably heard it before, but you can have all of the tips and advice and the resources in the world. You can have the best podcasts like this one, you can have the best books, the best TikTok advice, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, communication and public speaking is exactly that. To get
Mm,
better, you need to communicate. So give it a go. Say yes to the opportunity, say yes to the interview or the speech, and figure out the rest as you go. So
yeah.
my two tips, if I can add from that,
Yeah,
giving it
yeah,
a go,
yeah. Yep.
is to then get feedback. We
Yeah.
do so much presenting and so many speeches without getting any feedback. So if you are too shy to ask somebody, do the worst thing in the world and video yourself and force yourself to watch it back, just so you can see what you did well, which you might be surprised at, and where you can improve. Or find a trusted person who will give you honest feedback. And if you don't know if you have one of those, come and talk to me. I'll happily help you out and give you some kind feedback as well. So that's my tip for just starting, and you won't improve unless you practice and see how you go.
Yeah, exactly right. That's honestly the biggest thing that I learned in like sales too is just
Mm-hmm.
repetition. You know, like you
Yeah,
could
exactly.
read books on, you know, how to be good at sales or just communication, but nothing beats actually obviously the experience of doing it 1,000 times. So
100%. Yeah.
I love that. All right, Shana. Well,
Amazing.
I'll leave you there. For people that want to find you on your social media or anything,
Yep.
where would they find you?
Yes, so I am running a business called the Public Speaking Club. So you can find me on social media on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all at the Public Speaking Club. And you can send me a DM there if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can send me an email at hello@thepublicspeakingclub.com.au. And there's no pressure to, sign up or do a course, even though I run those. I genuinely love this. So even if you want to send a message, reach out and just get a bit of feedback or a little bit of advice or some tips, I'm happy to have a chat as well about that too.
Perfect. And I'm actually going to I'm probably going to ask for feedback after we do this. So
Okay,
that's all right.
sounds good.
All right, Shana. Well, I'll leave you there. Have a wonderful night and we'll make another podcast soon. All right.
Sounds
See you
good.
later.
Thanks, Dylan. See ya.
Bye.